Imagine a warm October day on a college campus. Golden autumn, soft sunshine, and an 18-year-old freshman walking out of her dorm with a smile on her face. In her backpack, a sketchbook, a set of graphite pencils, and endless plans for the future. A bright and talented young woman heads to a local park to find inspiration for a new project. She promises her friends she'll be back for dinner, but no one will ever see her alive again. Imagine that in just 2 days, this quiet, sunlit forest will become the setting for a nightmare that will rock the United States. Combing the dense thicket, volunteers stumble upon a black, scorched spot. The fire had been so intense that the surrounding trees had been charred. Manually sifting through the warm hull, forensic experts discover a melted cell phone, a room key, and tiny fragments of human bone reduced to ash. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to not only commit a monstrous crime, but to literally erase this girl's very existence from the face of the earth. However, the monster made one fatal mistake. In the most terrifying moment of her life, desperately fighting in the wilderness, the victim managed to snatch from her killer a single detail that would later point the finger at him. While police try to identify the remains and the killer himself races in a stolen car toward the Mexican border, this clue will begin the countdown to his inevitable arrest. Antoinette Keller, or as Toni's loved ones often called her, was born in 1992 in Plainville, Illinois. She was very active and energetic. Toni was known as a very hard-working, intelligent, and goal-oriented girl. Despite being constantly busy, she had many friends. From an early age, Toni embraced all forms of self-expression and loved experimenting with her appearance. By high school, she had a nose piercing and a sunflower tattoo, which she designed and painted herself. Toni adored the color yellow. For her, it represented a sunny and cheerful nature. She drew a lot and dreamed of making art her life's work. Besides this, the girl loved spending time outdoors. She was eager to try anything new, so by the time she graduated from high school, she had accumulated extensive experience in camping and rock climbing. Those who knew the story's heroine knew well that she was an eccentric, yet completely harmless and calm girl. She didn't try to use this to attract attention. She simply wanted to live by her own rules. By the fall of 2010, she was an 18-year-old freshman at Northern Illinois University. She majored in watercolor painting, and most often spent her free time with her friends or painting. So the girl accumulated a whole album of sketches and finished works. Most of the people in her group were also freshmen. They had spent a little over a month on campus and had already become close. After moving, Toni quickly integrated into student life, really enjoying the new atmosphere, and she always told her parents about it, who remained in Plainville and called their daughter every day. In addition to her mother and father, she was survived by her 23-year-old brother and cousin, who were delighted to see her when Toni returned for weekends. The city where the university campus was located was quite large, with over 25,000 students living in the dormitories alone. Although she immersed herself in the student atmosphere after moving, she found herself here during a time of grief. People were still recovering from the tragedy that occurred in February 2008. On Valentine's Day, a mass shooting occurred here. The attack was carried out by a former student, 27-year-old Stephen Kazmierzak. He entered the building in broad daylight, made his way into the lecture hall, and opened fire on students and faculty using a shotgun and 2 pistols. He fired 50 shots during the attack, killing 5 students and wounding 17. After the shooting, the gunman committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. All this bloodshed took 6 minutes, and the campus took years to recover. The echoes still reverberated through the halls when Toni enrolled and began her studies. The incident became one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Toni understood how horrific this incident was, but she wanted to look forward with optimism and build a bright future. Around noon on October 14, 2010, Toni decided to go for a walk near campus. She chose Prairie Park, which began a few hundred meters from the university grounds. It was a wooded area densely covered with trees and shrubs. This area remained open to the public. Thanks to its numerous hiking trails, it was frequently visited by tourists, cyclists, and locals simply strolling for relaxation. Toni decided to take a walk to find inspiration for her upcoming artwork. Although the location was wooded, she had to pass a supermarket and walk along the side of a busy highway before reaching the park. She set out for a stroll in broad daylight. Along the way, she encountered numerous vacationers and people exercising. To capture the views and find inspiration, she took a camera with her. She intended to use the collected footage later as source material for an art project. The views of the local park weren't just pleasant and interesting for her. They were her primary source of inspiration. When she left for Prairie Park with her camera around midday on October 14, 2010, she was wearing blue jeans, a gray jacket, and a scarf. As soon as she left campus, the other students returned to their usual routines. They only noticed the girl's disappearance the following day. On Friday, October 15th, she missed several classes and, as it turned out, never returned to the dorm grounds. Furthermore, Toni was supposed to meet one of her friends but never showed up. However, the students weren't yet well enough acquainted with each other to know everything about each other. They assumed nothing unusual had happened, and Toni had simply changed his plans. The only people who continued to worry increasingly were the girl's parents. She had always kept in touch with her mother and father, but they hadn't received any news of their daughter-in-law from her since October 14th. This was especially odd given that Toni was supposed to contact them that day to discuss the details of her return home. She had planned to visit her parents for the weekend. The theory that the girl had left on her own without warning anyone was absurd, as she didn't have her own car. Almost the entire day of October 14th passed, with Tanya's parents trying to justify their daughter's silence. When she didn't call back on Friday afternoon, everyone decided to find out what the problem was. That evening, the parents contacted the police to report their daughter missing. By the time the police were contacted, more than a day had passed without anyone hearing anything from Tanya, so detectives immediately took up the case. First, they obtained permission to search her dorm room. There, they found her portfolio of work, completed sketches, and paintings. There were no suspicious signs in the room, nothing to indicate an escape plan or any other problems in the girl's life. There were also no signs of a struggle, so the investigation continued. Police began talking to other students and campus staff. Given the shooting incident, the faculty categorically denied that anything had happened to Toni on university grounds. The fact is, after 2008, security guards were reinforced and began patrolling the surrounding area. Furthermore, every student could quickly contact them by cell phone for support. Unfortunately, no valuable information about the girl was obtained from the faculty. Security measures were strengthened. The administration installed special systems that allowed for the monitoring of all people entering and leaving the campus. In addition, information about the missing student was spread throughout the area. Leaflets were posted and distributed. Tanya's friends also took action. Various student groups created numerous social media pages, all dedicated to the search for the girl. The largest one gained over 12,000 followers. The young people and local residents actively cooperated, but the information was very contradictory and of little help. The search continued, becoming extremely stressful for everyone close to Tanya, especially her parents who were barely coping. Her mother even ended up in the hospital. After examining the timelines, it became clear that Toni had disappeared and had not returned since the exact moment she left campus. Volunteer teams began to form for a large-scale search and rescue operation, but there was virtually no reliable information about the girl. Several days into the search and rescue operation, the campus was quarantined. Only students, faculty, and staff as well as detectives were allowed on the premises. In total, police interviewed approximately 50 potential witnesses, all members of the girl's inner circle. Everyone hoped that Toni had simply gotten lost in the woods or twisted her ankle and needed help. But the reality turned out to be far more terrifying. While work continued inside the campus, it was also in full swing outside it. In particular, the Prairie Park area was being combed. 2 days after Toni's disappearance on October 16th, one of the volunteers managed to find something curious. It was something vaguely resembling charred bone fragments. But their condition was so poor that even a precise determination of their origin was difficult. It was clear to the experts that it was organic. But whether it belonged to a human or an animal remained a mystery. A forensic anthropologist was brought in to assess the situation. A true seasoned professional who had repeatedly helped investigators solve the most complex cases took on the job. When he finished examining the fragments, he concluded that they were human remains, burned for a reason. It was obvious that someone had attempted to destroy the body to complicate identification. The specialist was certain a brutal murder had occurred in the park. In addition to charred bones, personal belongings were found nearby. Many of these items were scattered over a large area, seemingly deliberately hidden to make them difficult to find. It took a full week of meticulously searching the park to find a sketchbook, a camera, a melted cell phone, charred clothing, and a lens from a broken pair of glasses within a radius of several hundred meters from the charred remains. Most of these items were quickly identified as belonging to Toni Keller. The clothing matched the description of the items the missing woman had worn when she left for the park. But there were also other items of clothing similar to men's. The identity of the eyeglass lens remained a mystery, as the missing woman didn't wear glasses. Although the official identification of the charred remains was still a long way off, the case was reclassified from a missing person search to a murder investigation. Because they needed to identify the victim first, the police didn't even have time to notify Mr. and Mrs. Keller about the body they'd found. While lab tests were ongoing, investigators were forced to operate as if Toni might still be alive, despite numerous circumstantial evidence suggesting otherwise. They spoke with various witnesses, from whom they received several statements claiming the girl had been seen in various locations around the city after her disappearance. However, it quickly became apparent that all these leads were dead ends. Due to the lack of information on the case, the atmosphere on campus and in the city grew increasingly tense. People spread various rumors about a possible connection between the shooting at the university and the student's disappearance. The search was only gaining momentum, attracting hundreds of volunteers and specialists. A team of divers was even deployed to inspect the riverbed that flows past Prairie Park. A theory arose that Toni might have taken her own life, but this idea was immediately dismissed by everyone who knew her well. She was too cheerful, loved life, and had never suffered from mental health problems, so such an outcome seemed unlikely. On October 20, 2010, police discovered another valuable clue. It turned out to be a dormitory key card in the name of Toni Keller. Even with this compelling evidence, the charred remains were still unidentified. Her parents confirmed their doubts about the item's origin. They said their daughter had lost her key card a few days before her disappearance. It happened during a walk in the woods. Her family continued to believe she was alive and would soon return home. Due to the extreme damage to the remains, it took time for experts to identify the body. DNA comparisons with the father and mother revealed a match, but the remainder of the forensic team's work continued until January 2011. DNA analysis revealed that the volunteers had identified Toni Keller, but it proved impossible to determine exactly how the student died. Her family has now been notified. Hopes for their daughter's return have been futile. Information about the time the charred body was discovered leaked to the public. The family realized the girl could have died on the day of her disappearance. A reinvestigation began. Old witnesses again contacted the police station. Several people claimed to have seen a strange, large man walking through Prairie Park on October 14th, the day Toni disappeared. Some witnesses claimed to know the man personally, as he was a local. He was identified as 34-year-old William Curl. Investigators decided to verify his identity. It turned out he did indeed frequently stroll through the park and lived in a nearby nursing home. Typically, elderly and disabled people lived here. Although William didn't fall into these categories, he was housed there because his income didn't exceed his pension. He had been unemployed for a long time, surviving on odd jobs. So he was provided with social housing here. Everyone who lived in the building knew William as a very withdrawn, unsociable person with quirks. Most could only say that he occasionally went out for a smoke alone and often walked in the park. William Curl was at the police station from the very beginning of the investigation. He was treated not as a suspect but as a potential witness. Judging by the information gathered, he could have been near the scene of the attack at the same time as Toni went for a walk. After the initial conversation, the man was simply released. There was no evidence linking him to the crime at that point. Even the victim's body had not yet been officially identified. Now, William's identity has come under closer scrutiny. It turns out that shortly after Toni's disappearance, the city's emergency services received a strange call. An unknown caller reported a fire in Prairie Park and gave the exact location. This report was full of oddities, as bonfires were often lit in the park, but they hadn't been reported before. An investigation revealed that the unknown person had pointed to the exact spot where the girl's body was later found. Now the analysis led the police to William. He was the one who called 911. The coincidence seemed no coincidence. Even at this point, serious suspicions arose against the man. Detectives believed he may have indicated the location where he disposed of the victim's remains, perhaps to deflect suspicion or perhaps out of guilt. Having received new information, detectives decided to speak with William again, but were unsuccessful. It turned out he had left town after his initial encounter with police, and even in other cities across the state, he could not be found. Bank records revealed that most of the recent transactions were made in Mexico. William's mother suggested he likely stole her car to escape. When police arrived, she said William had taken her car without permission, back in October. She had no idea where her son was. She couldn't reach him at his old phone number, and he remained silent. Suspicions against him grew, and the suspect went on the run. Thus, William became a wanted man, and the search for him took some time. It wasn't until late October 2011 that investigators discovered the wanted man was in Louisiana. He had returned to the United States from Mexico after running out of money and had made his way to Covington, where he tried to find work. The suspect was soon tracked down. He was spending time in a hotel room waiting for his shift to begin. There, he was arrested by Louisiana police on charges of obstruction of justice and car theft. William was then scheduled for extradition back to Illinois, but before that, questioning began. It took place in Louisiana, with 2 detectives leading the case who had traveled there specifically to see him. At first, William began repeating the same story as before. He claimed he had no idea who Toni was and had never even seen her. However, the detectives were now acting differently and pressuring him, making him nervous. The detectives remembered that the previous time, fresh, deep scratches were visible on his face and chest. Gradually, the man's story began to change. He said he was simply strolling through Prairie Park on October 14th when he accidentally discovered Toni's body. She was lying on a jogging trail and he believed was already dead. William claimed he had no idea what had happened to her, but he was frightened. He was so shocked by what he saw that he decided to move the body away from the road and deeper into the woods. But it didn't end there. Will claimed that Toni was covered in blood, so he inadvertently stained his clothes with her blood while dragging her. Now he couldn't explain the reason for this behavior and simply attributed his strange actions to shock. Having gotten dirty, he panicked even more, deciding he would now be accused of a crime he didn't commit. After thinking it over, William decided to destroy the evidence along with the remains and his clothes. According to the detainee, it took him about 10 minutes to start a large fire, after which he simply left the victim's body in it and walked away without looking back. During interrogation, the man repeatedly reiterated that he didn't want to lose everything in his life simply because he stumbled upon someone's body and was unlucky enough to be in the wrong place. Investigators believed he was the killer and was still lying, and they continued to pressure him. Will then changed his story again, now claiming he'd found the girl in the park under the influence of drugs. They struck up a conversation and spent about 45 minutes together. Will insisted the student had welcomed his company, and they began flirting, which gradually evolved into consensual sex right in the middle of the woods. During the process, Toni jerked her head back and hit her head hard. William watched as she began to have a violent seizure, foaming at the mouth. He simply watched in horror, unsure what to do. Soon, she fell unconscious and became silent. The detective asked him if it was panic and an accident. Why didn't he call paramedics? Why did he bring gasoline and burn her body all night? The suspect fell silent and covered his face with his hands. In response to this theory, the detectives commented that it all sounded too far-fetched. William simply asked for a lawyer. However, this was no longer a problem. Having gathered all the available evidence and suspicions against Will, the man was charged with first-degree murder, rape, and arson to conceal the crime. While the suspect was behind bars awaiting trial, his medical records were found, confirming that the discovered eyeglass lens indeed matched his prescription. Later, William's glasses were found in his car, missing their lenses. The lenses found at the crime scene easily fit into the empty space. The glasses were presumably broken due to the victim's aggressive nature. Toni had put up a fierce fight in response to the attack. Additionally, bloody clothing was found that matched William's description exactly. During questioning, he claimed to have gotten rid of a pair of shoes, pants, and a shirt because he accidentally soiled them with Toni's body. Circumstantial evidence was mounting, but everything was complicated by the condition of the remains. A criminal history check revealed William had previous run-ins with the law. His first conviction was shoplifting in 1999, followed by malicious damage to property in 2000, and in 2004 he was charged with possession of a controlled substance. He also had a questionable incident involving the opposite sex. In 1995, when William was 20, he attempted to kiss a girl against her will. It happened at a party where the woman had had too much to drink, and William decided to take advantage of the situation. The incident was later hushed up, and the woman refused to file a police report. Despite the mounting evidence against William, investigators still didn't even know the exact circumstances of Tanya's death. Her body spent a significant amount of time in a gasoline-fueled fire. A full autopsy was never performed. Because of this, the investigation had multiple theories about how events unfolded, all of them relying on circumstantial evidence and the suspect's stories. The main theory was that William accidentally encountered Toni in the park while she was sketching. He attempted to force her into sex, but when she refused, he assaulted her. The girl resisted, but the force was too much for her. So he beat her or stabbed her, then raped her and tried to cover up the evidence. Under state law, if convicted, the killer faced capital punishment. The suspect's fate hung in the balance until the state governor signed a law in March 2011 that abolished the death penalty in Illinois. While this was going on, Toni Keller's family grieved the loss as before. The pain was even greater than for most people in similar situations. The fact is, they were still unable to bury her body, even 6 months after the murder. Their daughter's remains, destroyed by fire, were stored as evidence at the district administration. It wasn't until April 2011 that the mother and father were finally able to say a proper farewell to their daughter. The trial was scheduled for April 2013. By this point, the question of capital punishment was no longer even being considered. The prosecution now focused on ensuring will receive the maximum sentence allowed by law. A serious fight was expected at trial, as the case was built almost entirely on circumstantial evidence. However, a trial was not necessary because before the trial began, William agreed to a plea bargain, and not just any plea. On his lawyer's advice, he entered an Alford plea. Technically, he continued to maintain his innocence, but agreed that the prosecution had enough evidence against him to convince the jury of his guilt. In response, the prosecution dropped the charges of rape and arson. Following a shortened trial, William received a 37-year prison sentence without parole. The defendant must serve his full sentence, which is also part of the plea bargain. He is expected to be released only after age 70. In 2017, William attempted to appeal the verdict. His lawyer claimed the confession was made under police pressure, as prosecutors threatened to prosecute his teenage son. On appeal, Judge Illinois rejected the pardon, upholding the conviction.